In 1980, Evel Knievel announced his retirement from motorcycle jumping. He said his body couldn't take any more crashes. Everyone believed him. He had broken 433 bones in his career. But that wasn't the real reason. There was a phone call that changed everything. Someone threatened him in a way that terrified even the fearless Knievel. The conversation lasted only minutes, but it ended a legendary career forever. Who called him? What did they say? The answer reveals a secret that was hidden up until now. Robert Craig Knievel was born on October 17, 1938, in the mining town of Butte, Montana. His father was just 21 and already cheating on his 17-year-old mother. Life in Butte was hard. The town ran on copper mining, and danger was normal. Men went underground each day not knowing if they'd come back. That shaped Robert from the very start. His roots were German on his father's side and Irish on his mother's. He had a younger brother named Nick, born in 1939. But just 1 year later, in 1940, both parents walked away. His mother left completely. His father dropped off the boys at his own parents' house, then took off for Reno to race cars, and never looked back. Robert was only 2 years old when that happened. His brother was still a baby. Their grandparents, Ignatius and Emma Knievel, were not ready for this. Ignatius had serious mental health problems and would go silent for months. Emma tried her best, but she was in her late 40s and overwhelmed. Robert and Nick were wild, angry, and loud. That early abandonment hurt them deeply. Robert started skipping school, stealing things, and breaking rules before he was even 10. Everything changed when he was 8. That year, he saw Joey Chitwood's Auto Daredevil show in Butte. Robert sat there in total awe, watching cars flip, jump, and dance on 2 wheels. That night planted something deep in him. He realized people could make a living doing crazy things. That thrill never left him. For the rest of his life, he called it the moment that changed everything. By the time he was a teenager, Robert was already taking dangerous jobs. He worked in the same copper mines that killed so many men. He also guided hunting trips through the rough Montana wilderness. His grandfather taught him how before his mind got worse. Then, in 1953, when Robert was just 15, his grandmother Emma died. She had been the only stable parent he ever had. After she was gone, Robert was on his own. His grandfather couldn't take care of them anymore. With no guidance, Robert spiraled further. He got into serious trouble, stealing, fighting, and ignoring the law completely. He dropped out of high school around 1954 when he was about 16. Even though he was athletic and good at sports like track, hockey, and ski jumping, school never meant anything to him. He thought it was pointless. Teachers said he was smart, but didn't care about anything except bikes and doing wild things. Walking away from school was the first step in what became his lifelong hatred of rules. He believed normal life just wasn't for him. In 1956, when he was 18, Robert joined the U.S. Army and trained with the 101st Airborne Division. He learned how to parachute and made over 30 successful jumps. He even joined the Army's track team as a pole vaulter, but the military couldn't tame him. He kept breaking rules and clashing with officers. After about a year, he was honorably discharged. Even though his time was short, the Army gave him skills, coordination, courage, and how to handle extreme risk. It also proved again that Robert just couldn't live by anyone else's rules. That same year, he had a run-in with the law that changed his name forever. He got arrested after a wild motorcycle chase. While in jail, a guard was doing roll call. In the next cell was a man named William Knievel, who the cops called Awful Knievel. The jailer looked at Robert and said, "Then you must be Evel Knievel." The nickname stuck, but later Robert changed the spelling to Evil to make it sound less dark. That one night in jail gave him the name the whole world would come to know. In 1959, Evel kidnapped his high school girlfriend, Linda Joan Bork. Her father hated him and wanted them apart, but Evel was determined. Some say he kidnapped her 2 or even 3 times. The final time, he took her across state lines to Idaho and forced a shotgun wedding. She later said she went willingly at least once. They got married in 1959 when Evel was 20. Their marriage lasted 38 years, but was full of fights and chaos. From the beginning, Evel used extreme actions to get what he wanted. That pattern never stopped. In the early 1960s, he turned to insurance fraud. He'd stage motorcycle crashes just to get payouts from insurance companies. He even worked briefly as an insurance salesman around 1962, after breaking his collarbone in a real race. That job gave him inside knowledge, which he used to fake accidents and collect money. Some of the crashes were real, some were staged, but either way, Evel learned how to turn danger into cash. These shady stunts were training for the bigger legal shows he would do later. He was already performing, just without the cameras. He also kept getting arrested for stealing things: hubcaps, motorcycles, even rumors of safe cracking and burglary. He spent time in jail more than once. Some people even said he bought his first motorcycle with stolen money. But Evel didn't hide this past. He turned it into part of his legend. To him, being a criminal wasn't shameful. It just showed he was tough, wild, and fearless. He only stopped because one of his partners got shot. That was enough to convince him there had to be a safer way to make money. In 1965, the world finally saw the start of what Evel Knievel would become. He launched his daredevil career with one of the strangest stunts anyone had ever heard of. He jumped over a crate full of rattlesnakes and 2 live mountain lions using a small Honda 200cc motorcycle. He didn't have any training. He just made it up. He called his act Evel Knievel and his motorcycle daredevils, and took it to dive bars around Montana. He hurt his ankle on the landing, but the crowd loved it. That raw animal jumping show was the beginning of something much bigger. Then came January 23, 1966, in Moses Lake, Washington. Evel tried to jump over 2 pickup trucks, but the bike didn't make it. He crashed hard, breaking his arm and ribs. But the crash got more attention than a clean jump ever would. People couldn't look away. He learned something that day. Failure, if it looked dramatic enough, could sell more tickets than success. By the end of that year, he had moved to Moses Lake and was working in a bike shop while lining up more stunts. In late 1967, with no money and no big break, he pulled off a stunt that wasn't physical. It was mental. He created a fake company called Evel Knievel Enterprises and hired fake lawyers to call up Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. They pretended to be from ABC Sports and Sports Illustrated. He even made calls himself, using different voices. He convinced the casino to let him jump the massive fountains out front. On December 31, 1967, after losing his last $100 in blackjack and downing a shot of wild turkey, he attempted the 141-foot jump. He crashed in the most horrific way, shattering his pelvis and legs, breaking both ankles, and suffering a serious concussion. He spent 29 days in the hospital. His wife later said he wasn't actually in a coma the whole time, but people believed the rumor, and it helped build the legend. The most important thing was that actor John Derek had filmed the entire jump, and his wife, actress Linda Evans, had captured the crash perfectly. ABC, which had refused to air the jump live, bought the footage and played it again and again. Evel became a household name not because he landed the jump, but because he almost died trying. The next big one came on May 25, 1968, in Scottsdale, Arizona. This time, He lined up 15 Ford Mustangs. He cleared them, but his landing shattered his right leg and foot. That didn't stop him. It just added more drama. Evel had figured out the formula. Bigger stunts meant bigger crashes. Bigger crashes meant more headlines. More headlines meant more money. He kept doing it, over and over, for years. On February 18, 1973, Evel Knievel stood before a roaring crowd of 35,000 people at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. The tickets were just $8 for adults and $40 for kids, but what they were about to see felt priceless. Right in front of them was a towering stack of 51 crushed cars, some placed 2 or 3 high. Knievel, wearing his red, white, and blue suit, revved his Harley-Davidson XR 750. That motorcycle weighed 300 pounds, built with steel, aluminum, and fiberglass. When he took off, he flew over all 18 car lengths and landed perfectly on a safety ramp built over the last few cars. The crowd went silent for a moment, then erupted. He grabbed the mic and shouted to them, "Did they come to see me die?" That jump made history and stayed unbeaten for 35 years. That same bike now sits in the Smithsonian Museum. The next big moment came on May 26, 1975, at Wembley Stadium in London. About 90,000 people came to see if he could jump 13 single-deck buses. Before the jump, he told a friend in private that he didn't think he could make it, but he still climbed onto his bike and took off. In mid-air, it became clear he was going to fall short. The bike slammed down, and he bounced and rolled painfully. He broke his pelvis and hand. But he didn't take the stretcher. He stood up, walked to the mic, and told the crowd this was it. He said, "You are the last people in the world who will ever see me jump, because I will never, ever, ever jump again." Then he walked off the field saying, "I came in walking. I went out walking." But that promise didn't last. Just 5 months later, on October 25, 1975, Knievel showed up at Kings Island Amusement Park in Ohio. This time, he would try to jump 14 Greyhound buses, a record no one had ever set before. The whole thing was aired live on ABC's Wide World of Sports. Viewers across America watched as he flew 133 feet and landed right on the roof of the final bus. The bike's frame snapped on impact, but he had done it. That jump broke records and stayed unbeaten for 24 years until Bubba Blackwell jumped 15 buses in 1999. The deal for that Kings Island stunt took months to lock in. Knievel made their team follow him 2,000 miles to Butte, Montana, just to get his signature while he was playing golf. A year earlier, in 1974, he had tried something even crazier. He couldn't get permission to jump the Grand Canyon, so he looked for another challenge. He ended up in Idaho, where he leased 300 acres near Twin Falls. That's where he tried to jump the Snake River Canyon using a rocket called the SkyCycle X2. This wasn't a motorcycle. It was a steam-powered rocket built by Robert Truax. It was supposed to reach 394 miles per hour in 5 seconds. But from the start, there were problems. During the first test, the rocket crashed. They rebuilt it, trying to make it more like a plane, but the flaws were still there. Still, Knievel hyped it up around the world. He sold movie theater tickets for people to watch the jump live. On September 8, 1974, at exactly 3:36 p.m., he launched. Right as the rocket lifted off the ramp, the parachute opened early. That mistake caused drag, pulling the rocket back. It actually made it across the 1,600-foot-wide canyon, but wind blew it backward. It fell into the canyon and crashed on the same side it started from. The vehicle slammed into rocks near the Snake River. Later, Knievel admitted if the rocket had landed in the river, he would have drowned because a harness malfunction had trapped him inside. Even though it failed, the stunt earned him $6 million. But that jump caused more problems than just broken metal. Shelley Saltman, who was promoting the Snake River event, had been recording everything behind the scenes. In 1977, he released a book called Evel Knievel on Tour. It said Knievel was drunk most of the time, addicted to pills, and treated people terribly. He even called him an anti-Semite. Knievel was furious. He claimed the book ruined his name and misled the public. Then came the darkest moment of all. On September 21, 1977, Evel Knievel drove to 20th Century Fox Studios. He found Saltman in the parking lot. Holding an aluminum baseball bat, he told him, "I'm going to kill you," and then attacked. One of Knievel's friends held Saltman in place, while Knievel swung the bat again and again. Saltman tried to protect himself with his arm, which shattered in multiple places. He passed out from the pain. The beating was so brutal that Saltman's mother had a heart attack when she saw the news and died 3 months later. Knievel only got 6 months of work furlough. Saltman sued and won $12.75 million, but Knievel never paid. He filed for bankruptcy instead. In 1976, Knievel tried one last major jump, and it was a nightmare. At the Chicago Amphitheater, he planned to leap over a 90-foot tank full of 13 sharks. As cameras rolled, he crashed. He got a concussion and broke both arms. But this time, it wasn't just him who got hurt. A cameraman standing nearby was hit by flying debris and lost an eye. That had never happened before. Until then, Knievel's stunts only hurt himself. Now, someone else was paying the price. After that, Knievel said he was done for good. By the end of 1975, he had broken 433 bones, more than any other entertainer in history. From the outside, Evel Knievel looked like a symbol of courage. But behind the red, white, and blue costume, something much darker was growing. Between 1974 and 1977, the FBI was secretly investigating him for possible racketeering. They believed he wasn't just a stuntman, but someone using fear and violence to control people. In a recorded phone call, when asked about a violent incident, Knievel coldly said he had nothing to do with what happened to the man, and that he couldn't control the thing. The investigation crossed several states and focused on whether Knievel used his fame to threaten victims for money. Though agents gathered a large amount of evidence, the case was never brought to court. The exact reason why the charges were dropped was never explained in the released documents. It wasn't just the FBI watching. People close to him knew something wasn't right. In one horrifying case, a man was beaten so badly in a Kansas City hotel room that he had to be hospitalized. The attacker wasn't Knievel himself, but someone working for him. Before and after the attack, Knievel called the victim and made threats, making it clear this wasn't just random violence. According to the FBI, this wasn't the first time. They believed Knievel often sent others to do the dirty work while he made careful threats on the phone to stay out of trouble. What made this even more painful was the way Knievel acted in public. He would visit schools, look children in the eyes, and tell them to stay away from drugs. He said, "Believe in God and stay clean." But behind the scenes, he was hooked on prescription pain pills and alcohol. His co-author, Shelley Saltman, recorded interviews that revealed Knievel was using drugs heavily while telling others not to. The addiction came from years of broken bones, nearly 40 of them, and constant pain. But by the mid-1970s, he was taking dangerous amounts of medication every day, and his behavior started spiraling out of control. Knievel's violent nature didn't stop at strangers. It found its way into his personal life, too. He had a long history of domestic abuse. He broke his first wife's nose and trampled his second wife's hand when she tried to walk away. One time, he even locked her inside a closet. In 1994, police were called to a Florida motel where a 25-year-old woman was found with red marks on her face and neck. She said, Evel Knievel had hit her during a fight. The next year, he was arrested again for attacking his girlfriend, but she later defended him in court. This pattern repeated itself over and over. Violence, arrest, then either dropped charges or small punishments. Then came the attack that ended everything. On September 21, 1977, Knievel was furious about a book Saltman had written. The book exposed everything: his drinking, drug use, racism, and cruel behavior. So Knievel waited for Saltman in the parking lot at 20th Century Fox. As Saltman walked by, one of Knievel's men grabbed him, and Knievel swung an aluminum baseball bat, screaming, "I'm going to kill you!" Saltman's arm and wrist were shattered and had to be rebuilt with metal plates. He passed out from the pain. Later, when Saltman's mother saw the news on TV, she was so shaken that she had a heart attack and died 3 months later. Knievel didn't seem to care. He called it frontier justice. This single act destroyed everything. He lost his deals with Harley-Davidson and Ideal Toys. The toy company alone had brought in millions. But within days, every partnership was gone. In 1981, Saltman sued and won $12.75 million, but Knievel had already filed for bankruptcy. The money was never paid. With interest, the total debt grew to over $100 million by the time Knievel died in 2007. Even after serving 6 months in jail and 3 years on probation in 1978, the violence didn't stop. In 1979, he beat up a man in San Francisco who had testified against him. The FBI kept watching, connecting him to more beatings and more threats. He was no longer the hero who jumped canyons. He had become someone the government saw as a serious danger. In 1980, he tried one last jump, just 11 cars in Seattle. But the crowd was small, and the excitement was gone. His body was broken, his bones damaged beyond repair from 433 fractures. The man who once dreamed of jumping the Grand Canyon could barely climb onto a bike. That performance was his quiet goodbye. His family life also fell apart. His son Robbie had started doing stunts of his own and was becoming successful. But instead of being proud, Knievel became jealous. He didn't want to be replaced, even by his own son. They argued over money, fame, and control of the family name. The tension between them grew until there was almost nothing left of their relationship. One of Knievel's lowest moments came in January 1977 during a rehearsal for a Shark Tank jump in Chicago. Inspired by the movie Jaws, he was supposed to leap over a tank with 13 live sharks. But he crashed during practice, breaking both arms and hitting a cameraman so badly the man thought he might go blind. Knievel was so shaken, he never allowed the footage to be shown for 19 years. It was the end of the showman's career. His final performance happened in March 1980 in Puerto Rico. A year later, he appeared once more with his son in Florida. But the magic was gone. By the late 1990s, the years of crashes and surgeries caught up with him. He had received multiple blood transfusions before 1992, and one of them gave him hepatitis C. In early 1999, doctors told him he had only days to live. But then, just in time, a donor was found, a young motorcyclist who had died in an accident. Knievel received a liver transplant on January 28, 1999, and survived. That transplant gave him 8 more years of life. But even in those final years, things were not peaceful. He divorced his first wife, Linda, in 1997 after 38 years of marriage. 2 years later, in 1999, he married a woman named Crystal Kennedy. He was 61. She was 30. The wedding was held at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, where his career had started back in 1967. But the marriage quickly turned violent. By 2002, she had a restraining order against him after he hit her and made threatening phone calls. In court, she said he had turned angry when she refused to take him back. Knievel told the judge, "She's lucky I didn't hit her." Then, something unexpected happened. On April 1st, 2007, Evel Knievel appeared on television to announce he had become a Christian. He was baptized on the Hour of Power show and said, "Jesus Christ is everything. If I had known that years ago, I would have been 3 times the man I thought I was." His words reached over 100 countries. It was the most vulnerable moment of his life, and for many, it was the first time they saw the real man behind the stunts. But it came too late. In 2005, he was diagnosed with a lung disease called pulmonary fibrosis. He was on oxygen 24 hours a day and had strokes that left him in a wheelchair. In 2006, he had a morphine pump implanted to control the pain in his spine. His last public appearance was on July 28, 2006, at Evel Knievel Days in Butte, Montana, beside his son. In his final interview, filmed in July 2007, he admitted his regrets. He talked about Saltman and how he never got to jump the Grand Canyon. Evel Knievel passed away on November 30, 2007. He was 69 years old and living in Clearwater, Florida. For years, he had been struggling with a serious lung disease called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. It slowly turned his lungs into scar tissue, making it harder and harder for him to breathe. He also had diabetes, which made things worse. On that final day, Evel was at his condo when he started having trouble breathing. An ambulance was called, but he died before they could get him to the hospital. Even though his health had been bad for a long time, his death still shocked people. Evel had gone through so much in his life. Back in 1999, he almost died from hepatitis C and had to get a liver transplant. He probably got the disease from blood transfusions after one of his many brutal crashes. In his last few years, he even survived 2 strokes. His close friend Billy Rundle said it best when he shared how unreal it felt. He said, "It's been coming for years, but you just don't expect it. Superman just doesn't die, right?" 10 days later, on December 10, 2007, Evel Knievel was laid to rest in his hometown of Butte, Montana. His funeral was held at the Civic Center, which could hold over 7,000 people. It was a huge event. Matthew McConaughey, the Hollywood actor, gave the eulogy. He had become close to Evel after working on a History Channel special about him. McConaughey said something that stayed with people. "He's forever in flight now. He doesn't have to come back down. He doesn't have to land." The entire funeral felt like one of Evel's legendary shows. Fireworks exploded in red, white, and blue over the night sky before the ceremony started. Hundreds of people came by to see Evel one last time as he lay in his casket, dressed in his signature white leather jacket with red and blue trim. There were large screens showing him on his motorcycle and photos all around. After the service, a hearse took his body through the streets of Butte, along what they called the Evel Knievel Loop. Even though it was cold and snowing lightly, people lined up along the 6-mile route to say goodbye, waving through the chill. But Evel's story didn't end with his funeral. His legacy became a mix of glory and scandal. On one hand, he inspired a whole generation of daredevils. Many say the X Games wouldn't even exist if it weren't for him. His son, Robbie Knievel, kept the family name alive. Robbie completed over 340 jumps and broke 20 world records. He even did the Caesars Palace fountain jump in 1989, the same jump that nearly killed his dad back in 1967. But after Evel died, darker stories started coming out. One of his longtime bodyguards, Gene Sullivan, said he often went without pay, even though Evel would walk around with wads of cash. It didn't stop there. In 1992, Evel had a secret affair with professional golfer Crystal Kennedy, which surprised many. And then came the FBI files. It turned out the government had been watching Evel during the 1970s. They were trying to figure out if he had any ties to organized crime in Chicago or Las Vegas, especially because huge bets were being placed on whether he'd survive each of his death-defying jumps.